Going inside the issues of our community, this is Local 12 Newsmakers.
When voters in the city of Cincinnati go to the polls on November the 4th, 2008, they will have the opportunity to transform the way that they select members of Cincinnati City Council on November the 3rd, 2009. Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. What is the best way to select the members of the Cincinnati City Council? What is the fairest way? What method of voting is most likely to assure that council reflects the citizenry of the city? These are questions that have been debated in Cincinnati politics for decades. In the early 20th century, council was composed of 32 members, 26 elected from each of the city's wards, and 6 elected at large. The reformed charter adopted in 1924 transformed that system, adopting a small council, just 9 members, all elected at large. The goal was to elect people who would weigh the interest of the entire city, not just the narrow interest of a small geographic section. To promote a diversity of backgrounds and perspectives on council, the charter embraced proportional representation, PR. Proportional representation, which operated in Cincinnati City Council elections from 1925 through 1955, can seem complex, but here are several things to keep in mind. Since 1957, Cincinnati voters have used what is called 9X system. From the field of candidates, often 20 to 24 in recent years, voters mark the ballot for their top 9 choices. All votes are of equal value. In proportional representation, voters rank their choices 1 through 9. In the first round of counting votes, only the number 1 votes count. Some candidates will have more first-place ballots than they need to win, 10% plus 1. In successive rounds of counting, ballots are randomly pulled from the stacks of candidates with excess votes, or in later rounds, candidates who have no chance to achieve the threshold, and redistributed to their second choice. This process continues until just 9 candidates are selected. To discuss this proposal for proportional representation, I am joined by 2 people. Anthony Lorenzo represents Better Ballot for Cincinnati, and Jeff Berding, a member of Cincinnati City Council. Mr. Berding has worked for years on possible changes in the way that council and the mayor are elected. Welcome to Newsmakers. Jeff, welcome back.
Good morning.
I think you've been working at this for about 10 years?
10 years since the direct election of the mayor effort in 1998-99.
Okay. Anthony, let's start with this proposal. Why at this moment are the NAACP, Coast, and other organizations, why have you come together to propose proportional representation right now? What's driving this?
Well, I mean, we feel that there is certainly not such a reflective city council of the people of this community, that there is a large portion of Cincinnati which feels unrepresented, or that the current city council is not a fair reflection of the voters. We have 22% of the representation is African American, yet 45% of the voting population is African American. We have 3 women on city council, 33% representation when 50% of the population are women. We feel that we need a better reflection of the people in our community. And we also need a system where we get to select the person who's our most preferred candidate rather than selecting 9 candidates that you don't necessarily like equally. We want candidates that are preferred as the favorite or first choice of the community.
And if PR were adopted, how would that help guarantee, from your point of view, that council would be more reflective of the total population of the city? Why is it? What's the thing about PR that allows that to happen?
Well, I mean, for instance, let's look at the 9X system that we have today. We have 6 city council members that make up 66% of the representation in our community. Yet from Monzel, Berding, Jiz, Lakita Cole, Chris Bortz, Cecil Thomas, they were all elected between 38% and 44% of the voters approved of these candidates. That's a minority of our community that's electing the majority voice on our city council. That's hardly a democratic system where the majority gets a voice on our council that reflects the majority's views in our community.
Jeff, you've been looking at all kinds of potential systems, and we'll talk about some initiatives that you've got in the hopper right now for the future. But What's your observation about PR? I know you've looked at it for a long time. What's your observation about PR in general and this particular proposal? Let's start out in general, though.
Well, in general, it's very complicated. There's 4 pages of ballot instructions that every voter would have to read every time they show up to vote for city council. It's not used in any other city in the United States other than Cambridge, Massachusetts. It is used in Malta, Scotland, Ireland, and in Australia, but this system is only
for
used
national elections
in one city in the country, Cambridge, Massachusetts. Additionally, it takes people's votes away. Under the current system, you get to vote for 9 council members. In the system that they're proposing, you're going to get 1 vote. And that takes away a democratic opportunity to say we think several council members are doing a good job. As recently as 3 years ago, there were 4 African Americans on council. I think this city has shown that a great willingness to vote for good candidates, whether or not they can raise money or not, whether or not they're well-known or not. If someone puts a program out there, works hard, they can get elected. And certainly the answer to getting people that reflect your interest are to help recruit them to run, help them work in the campaign, and help them get elected. And this city is rich in their history of doing that. And certainly I would offer that in terms of minority representation, Cambridge, Massachusetts, which has this system, has 9 council members, only 2 are African American. In the 30 years that we had PR, the most African Americans that were on council was 2. In 5 of those elections, there were 0.
That, to be fair, that's a very long time ago, and social attitudes were a lot different in the 50s, 40s, 30s, and 20s. So,
but Cambridge would be today.
Today.
And the point is under the current system, we had 4 as recently as 3 years ago because the voters are willing to elect good candidates for city council.
Anthony, you want to?
Sure. The interesting thing about Cambridge is that 13% of the population there is African American. So 2 voices on city council, or roughly 22% of the representation is African American, relative to a 13% population.
So you're
of
saying
voters.
it
creates
properly,
a great reflection.
But one of the
also,
theories,
if I could also, in Cincinnati, when proportional representation was used up until 1957, the African American population of the voters was 16%. And yes, they had 2 seats, 22% representation. What we see is that proportional systems produce a fairer reflection.
And let's be clear about why that can be. The idea is that minority groups, and it's not just racial minorities, it could be other interests. It could be union groups, it could be green groups, it could be groups that have a particular program that they want to push, can go out and they can, in a determined way, make sure that everybody in that interest group votes number 1 for a particular candidate.
That's very true.
And you drive that person to the top, you get a lot of number 1. So the idea is, it's not just about race, it's also about other interest groups too.
Correct.
And I would offer, I think that's part of the problem with the proposal and what the results of that proposal would be. I think the Charter Party had it right when they said in their initial reform in 26 that they want to go to a system where you're looking out for the broad interests of the city. And here, this is from for the PR advocates. One of the reasons they like PR, the advantage they call it, is that it creates unanimous constituencies. Representatives have unanimous constituencies, everyone who voted for them. Meaning that once we elect you to council, you just have to represent us. I only have to represent the people who voted for me because they'll keep pushing me as their first choice. So you're going to have all these broad interests fighting each other over, I'm the pro-life candidate, I'm the green candidate, I'm the NAACP candidate. I think we've had that chaos. We had that chaos for so long up until 2005, and we see what that got us, which is why the mayor is strongly against this. Mayor Mallory is strongly against this.
On the other side of that, Jeff, though, one of the things that you have put out there is the possibility of a mixed system of some at large and some at districts.
Absolutely.
And, those districts, so your system too would also have people that were dependent on just a slice of the population.
The only difference would be, though, is that number 1, if you were in a large district, and to be fair, we're talking about in my proposal 5, similar to police districts, with 4 at large. Number 1, you're representing everyone in your district, not just the people who voted for you.
Yeah.
And secondly, you're still being held accountable to produce results in which you would have to work with those who are at large, because you still have 4 at large, who are looking out broadly, as well as those in the neighboring districts. I would offer that to the extent that people, and we heard this yesterday before City Hall, people who don't feel they're being represented is largely in their neighborhoods. They don't feel that their neighborhood is being represented in terms of safety, blight, economic opportunity, and jobs. And a district council member could better work with the larger council to make those kinds of changes and produce that accountability.
There's the process of marking one's ballot, in this case 1 through 9 rather than just a 9X. There's the other side of this is the counting process. Now, in the old days, the way this worked is all the ballots were taken, you went to a ballroom at one of the hotels at the Alms or downtown, and it took a week to count these by hand, because what you had to do is you put everybody in their number 1 pile, and then somebody like Charlie Taft, who had 4 times as many votes, you went through and you started pulling his extra votes, declared him a winner, and then you pulled his extra votes, and then you redistributed to number 2, and then you just kept doing that. How is this going to be done this time? That raised a lot of questions in the early days about, was this really random, and was it really fair, and were people being fair about the way they pulled the votes out of those piles? How would this be done, Anthony, today?
It would be randomly selected from a certain number of precincts. So if there was a 1% surplus, we would look at what precincts had what votes, and that would be broken up equally amongst the precincts and the ballots selected at random. As far as what you said about the counting process and how we would implement this system, the optical scan machines that we have now have the capability to scan first choices and give us a first choice tally result on election night. And that is true, we would have to hand sort the ballots.
But then you would be hand sorting from that point on.
Correct. And all other proposals on the table about purchasing software aren't relevant for next year. Well, we're going to have to hand count ballots.
But this isn't just for next year. This is in the long run, too. Would you eventually see a software program that would do this through the computer?
We would leave that option up to our more fairly and accurately representative city council, which would be produced next year and are hand counted, completely open to public scrutiny.
Have you talked to the Board of Elections about this? How do they feel about this?
It's not up to the Board of Elections.
But
it's up to the people of Cincinnati.
Okay, all right. Jeff, what do you say about the counting process?
Well, first of all, the Board of Elections director testified before City Council and my committee on Tuesday that it's an 18 to 36 month process to get certified through the Secretary of State and the federal government, which is required now under federal law. So even if the voters were to approve this very confusing system, it would not be able to be in place for 2009. So there's going to be great confusion. We thought we just voted for this system, but it's not in place. Secondly, it's a cost of about $1.5 million to $3 million because the Board of Elections vendor is going to have to create the software and the hardware to get this system in place, because the only place it exists right now is in Cambridge, Massachusetts. We have a memo here from the city solicitor who says that under the federal restrictions of the Help America Act of 2002, the ability to do hand counting may be prohibited. In effect, because of what happened in Florida in 2000 and all the lawsuits, and what happened in Ohio in 2004, where there are still litigation, the fact is the federal government doesn't allow hand counting. And so to put out there...
They don't allow it?
They do not allow it. It is prohibited.
Okay. Anthony?
I absolutely disagree. We're a home rule state. Our local municipalities can hand count their ballots if they so desire to. It is state law that recommends the use or the application of HAVA and federal certification. Certainly the city council would have that option to purchase this expensive software moving forward and get it certified. And we would not oppose that.
Let me raise this question though. If I'm looking at the long run now, not 2009, not 2000, but when the software is there, one of the issues right now is if this had been proposed, and it has been proposed a couple times in recent past.
And been defeated.
Okay, and been defeated. But if this had been proposed 15 years ago, one of the arguments would have been computers would have made this a lot simpler. Today, my suspicion is when you say, we'll write a software program for this, immediately red flags go up and people worry that there's manipulation of the count going on because there's so much question about computer control of elections.
Sure.
What do you say about that?
Well, it's proprietary software, and that's why we feel that The only option on the table right now is hand-counted
So
ballots.
you prefer hand counting?
I do,
Okay.
yes. Now that's just my opinion. Of course, we would leave that up to our representatives once we have this fairer reflection of our community to make that decision moving forward. But what we see is that with voting machines, we have this proprietary secret corporate software, which, you know, in Florida, since you brought that up, that software is not even examined for security issues if it's hackable.
Yeah, I don't want to get
And
it.
we've seen in recent times in Ohio and other states, machines decertified because we saw flaws and problems with that.
I want to just raise, there's another big discussion. That's
Sure,
a huge can
sure.
of worms out there. Jeff, we're just about out of time, but what is it that you're proposing? I know you oppose this, obviously. What is it that you're proposing that the city of Cincinnati do to look at the election process?
Well, the mayor and I and some of my colleagues on council with various grassroots leaders are going to host a series of town hall meetings across the city where we're going to talk about council being some districts and some at large, maybe head-to-head elections, maybe the mayor becoming the executive mayor of the city, maybe looking at going to 4-year terms so that not so much time is spent raising money and politicking, focus on improving the city. That those would potentially be better reforms, but we have to see if that's what the voters would embrace.
Would PR be part of that discussion?
Well, I think if it gets defeated here as I expect it to for the third time in a little over a decade, I don't know that PR would necessarily have to be, but certainly if the NAACP and others would want it to be. But I would offer that I understand Mr. Lorenzo comes in from nationally to cities across the country trying to sell PR, but we've had no conversation about PR. And
Well,
certainly having town hall meetings
That's why we have
across the
elections.
city would allow for that.
That's why we have elections. I'm basically out of time. One quick thing.
Having had proportional representation here in Cincinnati for 30 years, this is hardly a new idea.
Right.
Obama would not be the nominee of the Democratic Party without proportional allocation of delegates.
Only older people like me.
Correct.
And even me, I don't remember it personally because, you know, it's 57, I was a kid. But, you know, so yes, it was here. There is institutional memory on one level, but not too much. And Jeff, real quick.
And when we went to vote in the Democratic primary, we had a choice: candidate A, Hillary Clinton;
Right. Okay.
candidate B, Obama. There was no PR
Can't go
on
there
the ballot.
We got other things to do. Thank you very much for coming, and we're going to follow this. If you'd like to learn more about proportional representation, you can go to the NAACP Cincinnati website or Google proportional representation. The second choice is Proportional Representation Library at the Mount Holyoke College website. It is an excellent bibliography containing many excellent entries. Stay tuned. After the break, we turn to a second ballot initiative by the coalition of the NAACP and Coast to remove the option of red light cameras from the tool bag of Cincinnati City Council.
City Council is attempting to balance their budget on the backs of citizens instead of being responsible with the money that they receive.
Citizens led by the NAACP and Coast gathered enough signatures to place an initiative on the November ballot that will deny City Council the option of adopting red light cameras. Used in many cities, these cameras automatically issue tickets to drivers who run red lights at designated intersections. I am joined now by Jason Gloyd, the chairman of Coast, the coalition opposed to additional spending and taxes, and Jeff Berding, a member of the Cincinnati City Council. He stays with us from the first part. Jason, welcome back.
Thank you.
And let's begin, Jeff, with you. Where does the issue of red light, the adoption of red light cameras in the city of Cincinnati, where does that stand right now? It's been talked about during budget times. It seemed like it was going to be adopted and implemented. It's never been, as I understand it. Where do we stand on this?
It's been defeated. The issue is dead with the existing council and the mayor. It was included in the budget back in December of 2007. I voted against that budget. It was approved 6-3. And then there was a separate proposal then to implement red light cameras, and I voted against it. It was defeated. The mayor had offered that he would veto it if it had passed, and it is no longer on the drawing board.
So are you saying that it just isn't even being talked about right now? It's not
No.
about to be implemented in 6 months or something?
No, it's a dead issue.
Okay. Given that, Jason, why put this on the ballot and make it an amendment to the charter, which, you know, is not just legislative activity, it is changing the charter of the city? Why do that at this point?
Well, I think as we all know, councils change, council members change their minds. We wanted the citizens to have the ultimate veto and just end it once and for all. This has come up now 4 separate times, and after it was voted down the last time by a slim margin, Cecil Thomas has already tried to bring it back up. So I think 4 times enough, let the citizens have their say and hopefully put it into it once and for all.
Jeff, do the citizens have their say when these around this issue? Have council members heard about this particular, what citizens think about this?
I certainly have. You know, I think we're a representative democracy. We take our position on these issues. 4 council members did vote for it, and certainly to the extent that this Coast and others want to lead an effort to deny those people re-election to council, they certainly have the opportunity to do that. I think we should be careful about putting legislative policy in the charter, which is really about the structure of city government as opposed to specific legislative issues. If council members vote a certain way, vote them out of office. I think we're on the right side, the same side in terms of not being convinced that we need red light cameras. I just don't know we need to go all the way to the charter, but I respect the right that if the voters say, no, we want to have that check, we'll take it.
I have to say, Jason, this is a concern I would have too, because this comes up, there's been a lot of proposals for charter reforms, and it seems to me that we begin tampering with that fundamental document. You know, we're really we're taking power away from the people that we elect. And what do you say to that? I mean, that's really the issue here. Should this be a charter amendment?
I certainly appreciate that and understand that. However, it's still a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And the people choose to give council certain powers, and this is one that people are saying we don't want to give council these powers.
Let's be clear about the substance of the red light camera issue itself. Why are you opposed to red light? And both of you could answer this one. You're both opposed. But Jason, why are you opposed to red light cameras?
To me, it's why are they being installed? Are they being installed to make money? Are they being installed for public safety? And I think you take either of the one, and I think it's wrong. You look at the statistics, and they show that it does not increase public safety. In fact, several studies have shown that it's increased accidents.
There's other studies that disagree with that.
Correct, and most of those studies are from cities that already have them. Albuquerque said that they decreased their accidents by 20%. The newspaper did an independent story and said it actually increased their accidents by 20%. So, and then as far as the financial, there are several cities that are actually, their revenues keep dwindling, so then they change the timing of the yellow light to try to increase their revenues.
Let's take a look at, I got a little bit of video, and this has been shown a million times on Channel 12, but here you had a car that just ran I mean, clearly a pedestrian, why shouldn't that guy get a ticket?
He should.
Know? Or, there's going to be one here, this is an accident, and there's a pedestrian in the crosswalk over there, almost gets hit by both of those cars. Why shouldn't those? It documents what happens. These cameras actually add to our ability to see what happened. Why shouldn't somebody like that get a ticket?
Well, I would offer that they should. And I would also add that I think that the jury, in my mind, as it was presented to City Council, was still out. This was originally presented as a money grab, which is why I voted against it.
It came up during budget time.
It came up during the budget with no hearings on whether or not it will help save people's lives. So I voted against it. We finally did have a hearing recently, but the only group that they brought in to testify was the vendor who was getting the contract. And an easy Google search of the vendor's performance in other cities raised real questions of their capability on some of the issues raised. So I continued to vote no. I would also say, though, that we've had in this city tragedies where people have died because cars have run red lights. And to the extent that we could show that it does improve safety. It would save people's lives. I certainly would have an open mind to it, but I agree that the testimony and the studies from Richmond, Virginia, and other cities, they go both ways.
Right.
And I don't think we've given it a real comprehensive hearing.
And a lot of that stuff's on the web. I've got only about 30 seconds left. Jeff, where do you stand on this proposal to put it in the charter?
I don't think it's needed. I'm very cautious about changing the charter for legislative issues. I think the council members who voted yes, if people led by Coast want to deny them re-election, they have that opportunity. That's called a democracy.
Jason, final word real quick.
I think people are going to vote yes on democracy, yes on freedom, and no to the red light cameras.
Okay, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Remember, Newsmakers programs are streamed onto our website, local12.com. If you get into a discussion with someone about an issue we discussed on the program, be sure to refer them to our website. It's an excellent way to prepare to vote on November the 4th. Join us again next week to meet the men and the women working to shape our community for the future. Have a good week.